Well, you know, today is GX Jupiter Larson's birthday.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Wow.
So what do you know about GX?
DX Jupiter Larson is I would call him a performance artist, but he's also a writer. I hate to say a visionary, I guess, in the sense of what people think a visionary is, but my understanding, he was from Canada originally. But when I first met him, he lived in San Francisco, and he created this thing called the Haters, and it was a performance-based thing where he was either observing, counting, or destroying. Like people, a lot of people know the Haters for the destroying, where it would be a performance. These group of guys wearing all black and masks would destroy something, but they would destroy it in a way where they really created this entropy. And he talks and he writes about entropy and creating entropy. So in destroying, it's kind of like by example. They could start destroying something or creating some entropy, but then the audience finishes the job. They create this, start destroying, and then everyone starts. Like I've seen it where it's like they're ripping pages out of books,
It just
and
turns
then
into a riot.
it ends up being a book fight with the whole audience. And the haters can walk away from the entropy because they started it. But then there's been other performances where he's counting grains of sand in like as an art installation, and you can observe him. He's just counting grains of sand for like 8 hours, and so you're like, wow, I just watched this guy count grains of sand.
Did anybody count with him?
I don't think so. I think people their attention span's not literally as long as his is. So
He
they're
has a
like, oh, that
very
guy.
long attention
Yeah,
span.
very long attention span, and so he's counting. They were like, wow, that guy was counting grains of sand. I don't know how long that's going to go on for, but then they keep going. And then there's the observing, which I saw one show where there was, I think, two haters watching static on TV with ear bleeding volume of the
Well,
static.
that's always kind of part of the show, right? Let's throw that in there.
Yeah, there's always an
The ear
audio aspect,
bleeding,
ear bleeding audio. But in this case,
noise.
you're
Because I remember
watching.
on the book one, I think I was at that one. It was at the Fort Collins one.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so I was at that one, and there was also like somebody was just like, if I recall, there was just a tape of somebody going blah 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 or
I don't
reading
remember
or
the audio from
like
that one.
there was some kind of like audio of like that ended up. I think maybe it was just like random people reading from random books like looped over top, but it
Ah,
basically came across as like blah 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 blah
okay.
blah
Yeah,
blah
see,
blah.
that's funny. I don't
Because
remember it, the audio.
because at first like GX and whoever else it
Other
was like
haters.
the hater people
Yeah.
were like the haters the haters the haters were like looked like they were reading and there was this blah 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 blah
They
blah
were
blah on the
ripping
thing. Well,
pages
but
out,
they would
right?
read it and they would turn the pages and they would rip a page out and they rip a page out and rip a
Yeah.
page out and rip a page out. And then like there were all these other books and they were ripping the pages out and then throwing the books at people and then people started picking up the books and ripping the pages out and throwing them back at the haters and then it
The
became a riot
all out book riot.
essentially.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, which was brilliant. So GX, like, so I always thought he was a pirate because he had an eye patch,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
and that would be the way that I would characterize him. He was this bearded, slightly older than me guy, or always came across like he had more gravitas than me. So maybe he's like kind of intellectually changed, but he had much more gravitas than I, so he always felt much older. I remember him like for like a year he would only eat orange food.
Right, right.
And I don't know what that meant, like Orange Crush and Cheetos
There's
and
very
Cheese
few orange
Whiz.
foods
Good
except
stuff.
oranges and
Yeah,
orange
yeah. But
flavored
he
things.
wouldn't eat oranges because they were natural,
Uh,
I think.
yeah, I think that might be true.
And yeah, well, he's a Zen master in his way.
Yeah, and just had his 40th year. He just had a mini tour called
Oh,
40
right.
Fest, and he came to Denver.
Oh, did
Um,
he?
yeah,
I
and
didn't
we
know he
drove
came to
around
Denver.
Denver and we talked about like, oh look, that show was there and this other show was here.
Really? On
Yeah,
tape?
no, just yeah, I know. Should
I'm
record.
doing a big rectilinear L on my forehead
Yeah,
to Andrew because that's the kind of thing that you would totally document
yeah.
if you had a
Should have
documenting bone in your
documented.
body.
Yeah. Another thing he did for various years was grinding microphones or rubbing microphones on things, or there was that kind of industrial noise kind of aspect of creating sound by doing something.
Yeah, well, he was really pure about that. Like, he was at the transitional phase between the sort of EDM thing and pure synth music and noise. And he was definitely towards analog, pure noise with content behind it.
And the interesting thing is when if you just hear it, like you're saying, or if you see it, but if someone describes it the next day, which I think is in a lot of ways what he's doing is creating something that's kind of indescribable, right? Like you can say he was doing a thing with a thing, ripping pages out of books or grinding a microphone, and so you're creating this thing where people can talk about, but there's no way they can accurately describe it because it has to do with the sound and the process. And even now, like I just saw a thing recently in his 40th year, he was rubbing a bugle, which is a musical instrument, but he's rubbing a bugle on like a table with sandpaper. And like you would say, okay, that sound, you're gonna put a mic on the bugle so that you can hear whatever. But no, he's got a mic on the table. So he's rubbing the bugle on the table, but the table is what's mic'd, not the bugle or whatever. So he's always like one step ahead of like what you're gonna assume he's doing or whatever. And yeah,
Well, it's cool because, like, so we could riff on that whole thing. So if you go into the Baudrillard thing, the Jean-Paul Baudrillard thing, where you start going to levels of abstraction and simulations, and you start thinking about so instead of miking the bugle, you're miking the table. And so you're going a level down, and so you've got an additional layer of abstraction between the thing that you're recording and the thing being recorded. And that's actually an interesting. I mean, that's like a totally like crazy game to play. I could map this back to a lot of like life choices that I've made. Every one of those layers of abstraction creates a different filtering of an experience. And then if you but like everything is like that, and there's trade-offs for interfaces. But like, I mean, it's the same thing as like walking versus biking versus riding a motorcycle on a trail. You get to see different things in each of those experiences, and GX is a master of choosing dissonant interfaces, dissonant levels of interface with an experience, to where you experience things in a way that's juxtaposed from the way that you would expect to experience it.
Yeah.
He's really good at that.
Yeah, really well, and kind of like this writing too. Like you're following it, but it's really following you and watching how you're reacting to it. So it's like it's taking you for this ride, but it's like in front of you and behind you at the same time. The funny thing about the haters, the name, it wasn't indicative of what was going to happen because you're like, I mean, these guys seem kind of ominous, but they're just doing a thing, and you're just watching them do a thing, or you're joining in. But it wasn't a punk band.
GX is so nebbishly innocuous, intellectual art guy. There was nothing threatening.
No, it was not
ever about him or in his demeanor or in his presentation. And then they had this hateful name, and they would cause these riots, but in a really passive way.
Yeah, yeah.
It was weird because they would just throw the possibility out at people, and people would just go on it of their own accord.
Yeah. Reaction.
And it was definitely premeditated. Like it wasn't a surprise. They weren't surprised that was going to happen. It was engineered.
Yeah.
Somehow.
But however it ended up was a success.
But so that would be, Seth Godin was asking us who we'd want to interview. And it would be interesting to ask GX how he discovered, like how he alighted on the principle that he can incite riots passively.
Yeah.
By doing his shows, like what the evolution of that was over, because he's been doing this for 4 years, and probably more, and leading up to it. But as that thing, 40 years. But how did he?
Yeah, what led up to year zero of that?
Right.
How did that?
Right.
What was the conception of that? That would be an interesting thing. Okay,
well, so how did he discover that he could cause riots passively?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because lots of people, I mean, Jim Morrison figured out, I mean, everybody knows how to start a riot by like riling people up. But how could you start a riot? Like, how did he figure out you could start a riot by reading a book?
Yeah, and there's been more than one of those shows where it's not over until everybody leaves.
Right.
Right? So it's like it's just I mean this entropy, this thing keeps going, but once everyone's left because they can't endure that ear bleeding static sound anymore, or like can't see through like the thick smoke and everyone's like coughing and they end up outside, then it's over, right? The entropy has now come to a natural conclusion.